welcome. As it is the 150th anniversary of the American Civil War, we will today discuss and reminisce the devastating events, the heroic people, and the aftermath of the war. Hello ladies, and thank you for joining us today. We all know slavery was a big issue, but what were the other main causes of this war?
As you said, slavery caused the North and South for years before the war to have continuing differences, which led to the South feeling like they didn't have their own rights.
And Lincoln's ultimate goal was to have seceding states rejoin the Union. He was against slavery, but was careful not to have the war based solely on slavery.
To be frank, though, many historians would argue that the Civil War was a war on slavery. Slavery was its cause, and the war could not be resolved without it.
Thank you. How did Lincoln respond to the pressures of presidency at the time of the Civil War?
Well, Lincoln was an extremely strategic man. He's often viewed as one of the greatest presidents of American history. He was faced with some of the hardest decisions that the president would ever make in our history.
When Southern states seceded, Lincoln would stop at nothing to bring them back into the Union to prove to Americans and to the world that democracy can and will work.
His decisions, such as the Emancipation Proclamation and Freedmen's Bureau, show his views on slavery, but were again strategically put into effect.
What were some of the biggest battles of the Civil War? How did it end?
Well, the first battles were the battles of Bull Run, also known as the First and Second Manassas. The Confederates won the first battle of the Civil War.
Well, the bloodiest of battles, with 23,000 casualties, was the Battle of Shiloh in southern Tennessee. It's said that the 3-mile-long battlefield was actually covered in dead bodies.
And the deciding battles, which you asked about, of the war, which confirmed Union victory, was the battles of Gettysburg and Vicksburg, where Ulysses S. Grant pierced Vicksburg's defenses. Famished soldiers, actually, in this battle, reduced to eating mules and rats.
You mentioned briefly the Emancipation Proclamation. Can you go into detail on its effects, good and bad?
The Emancipation Proclamation declared all slaves forever free in areas of rebellion. It allowed Southern slaves to basically participate in the war as part of the Union Army. Its aim was to weaken the Confederacy support and take away their property for the gain of the Union side.
We're aware that the draft was set in place for both the Confederate and Union sides. How did the soldiers view the war?
Well, at first many people signed up because they thought the cause was good. Leaders were telling soldiers that the war was not about slavery, which led to the confusion of soldiers why they were even there.
Life at war was brutal on both sides. Some believed in rights or for the nation and the president, and others went to battle just to escape their normal everyday lives.
Thank you for your time today, ladies. A big thank you goes out to Miss Stone from Stanford and Miss Bowie from Harvard. Now we'll talk about Reconstruction with Miss Penfield Sear, a professor at Brown University.
Hello.
How effective was the 13th Amendment in abolishing slavery?
Well, in response to the 13th Amendment, which seemed like quite a big step forward at the time, it actually was it had its setbacks. The rise of sharecropping and black codes became a major part of Southern society, and African Americans were reduced to staying on plantations. Once just being set free with the 13th Amendment, they didn't really know where to go. They didn't really have the skill sets, so a lot of them ended up staying on the same plantations that they had grown up on. And being illiterate, they could really not do anything else, so they were just stuck in that cycle.
Regarding blacks' recent freedom, were there any systems set in place to get them back on their feet to prevent this vicious cycle?
Yeah, there was the Freedmen's Bureau. That was a big organization in the time, and that helped with, its responsibility was for the relief, education, and employment on the former slaves. And it gave many freed men and Southern Unionists the ability to lease land, and with the option of buying after 3 years. So not really read a lot about, but the Freedmen's Bureau had a big impact on helping people, especially slaves in need.
What were the differing opinions on Reconstruction?
Well, there was the easy, speedy side of Lincoln and the more harsh side of Johnson, and Lincoln wanted to have 10% or more Southerners who had casted ballots in the 1860 election to take an oath of allegiance to the Union and accept the emancipation. And if that had happened, the majority could make a loyal state government, and he wanted to establish pro-Union governments within the Confederacy. Win the allegiance of the Southern Unionists, and then build a Southern Republican Party. And in comparison, Johnson wanted, stop.
Grant, how was the battle? How is everything going?
Well, not too great. We had many casualties, and I don't know, the rebels just sprang from nowhere, and it was, it was an all-night battle. So much blood and screaming, and I could not handle it. I spent the night under a faraway tree in the woods, and me and my steed, we fought hard and we survived. And look how muddy he is. It was an awful battle.
How are the troops holding up?
Oh, awful. We just were not prepared for what was going.
Grant, how do you think the Confederates are holding up? How are their troops doing?
They're strong. Leah's done a great job with holding the troops. They're all trained very well for being farmers and such, and I'm worried.
Can you see an end to this war anytime soon?
Hopefully.
Directed by the APUS Foundation.
Edited and produced by Ellie Penfield-Sear and Sydney Sloan.
Starring Marina Bowie, Sydney Sloan, Jacinda Stone, and Ellie Penfield-Sear.
Guest starring Ricky DeHorse. Oh, special thanks to iPhone cameras.
And screw flip cameras.